What if I told you that one city, built from blood, betrayal, and legend, would go on to rule almost the entire known world? A city founded, according to myth, by a man who murdered his own brother. A civilization so powerful that even today its laws, language, roads, armies, architecture, and ideas still shape the modern world. This is not just the story of an empire. This is the story of Rome, and how a humble settlement beside a muddy river became the most feared superpower of the ancient world. Long before marble palaces, mighty legions, and emperors crowned in glory, Rome was nothing more than a rough settlement in central Italy. No one looking at it then would have imagined its future. There were no grand roads, no colossal arenas, no vast armies marching under golden eagles, only hills, forests, farmland, and small communities trying to survive. The land that would become Rome sat near the Tiber River, an important waterway that connected inland tribes to the sea. This location would later become one of Rome's greatest strengths. Trade could flow through it. Armies could move across it. Wealth could gather there. But in the beginning, Rome was overshadowed by stronger neighbors. To the north lived the mysterious Etruscans, advanced builders and traders. To the south were Greek colonies, wealthy and sophisticated. Around Rome lived many Italic tribes competing for land and influence. Rome was small, rough, unimportant. And yet hidden inside that little town was something rare, an unstoppable will to grow. Every great civilization creates myths about its birth. Rome's founding story was violent, dramatic, and unforgettable. According to legend, twin brothers named Romulus and Remus were born from royal blood. Their uncle feared they might challenge his power, so he ordered them killed as infants. Instead, the babies were abandoned near the river. There, a she-wolf discovered them. She fed them, protected them, and kept them alive until a shepherd found them and raised them as his own sons. As men, the twins learned the truth of their birth. They overthrew the tyrant uncle and restored justice. Then they decided to build a city of their own. But where it should stand, and who should rule it, became a bitter argument. The dispute ended the Roman way, with violence. Romulus killed Remus. Then, in 753 BC, he founded a city named after himself, Rome. Rome, whether true or not, the story reveals something important about Roman identity. Rome believed strength mattered. Rome believed destiny required sacrifice, and Rome believed greatness often came through conflict. For generations, Rome was ruled by kings. These early rulers likely mixed legend with history, but they shaped the city's first institutions. Roads were built, walls were raised, religious traditions formed, political customs began. One of the most lasting creations was the Senator Council of elder nobles who advised rulers and represented powerful families. Even when kings disappeared, the Senate would remain for centuries. Rome also absorbed ideas from neighbors. From the Greeks came writing, art, religion, and architecture. From the Etruscans came engineering, symbols of power, and military customs. Rome was already learning one of the secrets that would make it powerful. It copied what worked, then improved it. Eventually, the Roman monarchy collapsed. The last king, traditionally remembered as Tarquin the Proud, was hated for tyranny and abuse. When a scandal involving royal cruelty shocked Roman society, noble families rebelled. The king was expelled. And in 509 BC, Rome created something revolutionary. A republic, no more kings, no single ruler with permanent power. Instead, Rome would be governed by elected officials, temporary magistrates, and the Senate. This was a bold experiment. Power would rotate, leaders would be watched, authority would be divided. At least in theory. 2 chief magistrates called consuls were elected each year. Each could block the other. The Senate guided policy. Assemblies of citizens voted on major matters. Rome now believed itself free. But freedom in ancient Rome was complicated. Only certain men had influence. Women had no political rights. Slaves had none at all. And class conflict was just beginning. The Roman Republic was divided between 2 major citizen groups. The patricians were wealthy aristocratic families. The plebeians were everyone else, farmers, workers, merchants, soldiers. Plebeians served in the army and paid taxes, yet had limited political power. Tension grew again and again. Common citizens demanded rights. Sometimes they even refused military service until reforms were granted. Slowly, over generations, plebeians won important victories. Representatives called tribune written laws, access to offices, greater legal protections. This struggle shaped Rome deeply. Unlike many ancient states, Rome could adapt. It bent without fully breaking, and that flexibility helped it survive future storms. Rome's early centuries were full of war. Neighboring tribes raided farmland. Cities competed for territory. Alliances shifted constantly. Every Roman male citizen was expected to fight when called. War was not an occasional event, it was part of life. The Roman army in these early years was not yet the legendary machine history remembers. It was a citizen militia of farmers carrying weapons. But Romans developed a reputation for something priceless. They refused to quit. Lose a battle, raise another army, lose land, fight again, suffer. Disaster returned stronger. Many enemies could win once. Few could defeat Rome permanently. Then came one of the darkest moments in Roman memory. Around 390 BC, Celtic warriors known as Gauls marched south into Italy. They crushed Roman forces at the Pass of the Allia. Then they entered Rome itself. The city was looted and humiliated. For Romans, this trauma never faded. Their sacred city had been violated, their weakness exposed, their pride shattered, but the sack also transformed Rome. Walls were strengthened. Military reforms accelerated. Fear of foreign invaders became permanent. Rome would never again take security lightly. Sometimes humiliation becomes fuel. For Rome, it did. In the centuries that followed, Rome expanded across the Italian peninsula. This was not quick. It took generations of brutal struggle. Rome fought Latin rivals. Sabines. Etruscans. Samnites. Greek cities in southern Italy. Some wars were desperate. The Samnite Wars nearly broke Roman power. Mountain warriors ambushed Roman armies and challenged Roman dominance for decades. Yet Rome endured. Each victory brought more land, more manpower, more resources. Rome also used smart policy. Some defeated peoples received alliances, others partial citizenship. Many were drawn into Rome's system. Instead of endlessly resisting it, this was genius. Rome did not just conquer enemies, it turned enemies into future soldiers. By the early 3rd century BC, Rome controlled most of Italy. The small river town was gone. A regional power had risen. Southern Italy contained wealthy Greek cities with strong armies and rich culture. When conflict broke out, one Greek city called for help from King Pyrrhus of Epirus. A brilliant commander related to Alexander the Great's world. Pyrrhus arrived with elite troops and terrifying war elephants. To Roman soldiers and horses, elephants were monsters. Pyrrhus won battles, but each victory cost him heavily. Too many dead, too many wounded, too few replacements. Rome, meanwhile, kept rebuilding, after another. Costly success. Pyrrhus reportedly said, "One more victory like this, and I am ruined." That is why we still use the phrase Pyrrhic victory, a win so expensive it feels like defeat. Eventually Pyrrhus withdrew. Rome absorbed the Greek cities. It had now defeated one of the finest military traditions on earth. The world should have been paying attention. With Italy under Roman control, the Republic now faced a far greater challenge. Across the Mediterranean stood Carthage. Rich. Naval. Commercial. Powerful. Founded by Phoenician settlers in North Africa, Carthage controlled trade routes, islands, fleets, and overseas wealth. Rome dominated land. Carthage dominated sea. Two expanding powers, one Mediterranean. Collision was inevitable. The spark came over Sicily. Both Rome and Carthage wanted influence there. War began in 264 BC. Rome had one major problem: it lacked a serious navy. Carthage possessed experienced fleets and generations of maritime knowledge. Rome responded in classic Roman fashion: build one. Legend says Romans captured a Carthaginian ship, copied its design, and mass-produced fleets. They trained rowers, adapted tactics, invented boarding bridges to turn sea battles into infantry fights. If they could not outsail Carthage, they would outfight them. The war lasted over 2 decades. Enormous losses, shipwrecks, battles on land and sea. At last, Rome prevailed. Carthage lost Sicily. Rome had entered the Mediterranean as a naval power. The Republic was no longer just Italian. It was imperial. Defeat humiliated Carthage, but it did not destroy it. One Carthaginian family, the Barcids, rebuilt power in Spain. Its leader Hannibal Barca hated Rome. He made his young son swear eternal hostility toward the Republic. That boy's name was Hannibal. and soon Rome would face the greatest enemy in its history. Before moving into the next chapter of Hannibal and Caesar, we need to understand why Rome kept rising. It was not luck. It was not because Romans were always smarter. It was because Rome possessed a rare combination. Roman citizens accepted sacrifice for the state adaptability. They copied enemy weapons, tactics, and systems. Persistence defeat rarely ended Roman resistance. Integration. Rome turned conquered people into allies. Ambition. Every victory created hunger for another. Many kingdoms won battles. Rome built systems. That difference changes history. Success created new problems. As Rome expanded, wealth flooded in. Landowners became richer. Generals gained fame. Slaves poured into Italy. Small farmers struggled. Politics grew more corrupt. Competition became ruthless. The Republic was strong outwardly, but cracks were forming inside. Rome could conquer nations. Soon it would struggle to govern itself, and that internal conflict would produce some of the most famous names in history: Hannibal, Scipio, Marius, Sulla, Pompey, Caesar, Augustus. But before emperors came, Rome would first fight for survival, because Hannibal was coming. A young commander driven by hatred would lead elephants across frozen mountains, crush Roman armies again and again, and bring the Republic closer to destruction than ever before. His name was Hannibal, and Rome was about to learn fear. There were many enemies of Rome: kings who resisted, tribes who rebelled, pirates, rivals, invaders, and men who dreamed of seeing the Republic burn. But among them all, one name inspired a deeper kind of fear: Hannibal Barca. He was not Roman. He was Carthaginian. Yet he understood Rome better than many Romans did. He knew Rome's true strength was not its walls, not its gold, and not even its armies. Rome's greatest strength was confidence. If that confidence could be broken, the Republic itself might collapse. So Hannibal prepared to do what many believed impossible. Instead of attacking by sea, where Roman fleets had become powerful, he chose a route no sane commander would consider. He would march overland, across Spain, through Gaul, over the Alps, and into Italy itself. And he would bring an army with him. He would even bring elephants. In 218 BC, Hannibal began one of the most legendary military marches in history. His forces were made up of Africans, Iberians, cavalrymen, mercenaries, and war beasts that terrified enemies before battle had even begun. But the journey was brutal. Mountain tribes attacked from hidden slopes. Snow and ice killed men and animals alike. Food ran low. Narrow paths collapsed beneath marching feet. Many never reached Italy, but those who survived emerged where Rome least expected them: northern Italy. Hannibal had not merely invaded Roman land. He had shattered Roman assumptions. Roman armies rushed north to destroy the invader. They expected another enemy general who would soon be crushed by Roman discipline. Instead, they faced a military genius. At the Battle of Trebia, Hannibal lured Roman troops into freezing waters and exhausted them before striking. At Lake Trasimene, he used fog, terrain, and timing to create one of the greatest ambushes in ancient warfare. Thousands died. Roman leaders were killed. Panic spread across the Republic. People began asking a terrifying question: how could this foreign commander keep defeating Rome? Then came the greatest disaster of all. In 216 BC, Rome gathered one of the largest armies it had ever assembled, perhaps 80,000 men. The plan was simple: crush Hannibal with sheer numbers. At Cannae, Hannibal welcomed the attack. He weakened his center on purpose and strengthened his wings. As Roman troops pushed inward, believing victory was near, Carthaginian lines curved around them. Then cavalry struck from the rear. Rome's massive army was trapped, crushed together, unable to move, unable to escape. What followed was slaughter. Tens of thousands died in a single day. Few defeats in military history compare to Cannae. Rome had lost armies before, but this felt different. This felt final. Allies considered abandoning Rome. Cities revolted. Even today, commanders study Cannae as a masterpiece of battlefield encirclement. Most states would have surrendered after such a catastrophe. Most governments would have sued for peace. Rome did neither. That was the Roman difference. The Senate refused surrender. New armies were raised. Teenagers, old men, freed slaves. Anyone who could hold a weapon was organized for war. Rome chose endurance over panic. A cautious Roman leader named Fabius Maximus proposed a different strategy: avoid major battles, wear Hannibal down slowly. starve his army of support, harass his forces, retreat when necessary, survive long enough for time to become Rome's ally. Many Romans hated the idea. It felt cowardly and dishonorable. But Fabius understood something prideful men often forget. You did not defeat Hannibal with bravery alone. You defeated him with patience. While Hannibal campaigned in Italy, Rome struck elsewhere. In Spain, a young Roman commander named Publius Cornelius Scipio rose to prominence. He was bold, intelligent, charismatic, and willing to learn from his enemy. Scipio captured key Carthaginian strongholds and studied Hannibal's methods carefully. Then he made a daring move. He invaded North Africa itself. Suddenly, Carthage faced danger at home. Hannibal was recalled from Italy after years of campaigning. At last, the two greatest commanders of their age would face one another. In 202 BC, at the Battle of Zama, Scipio defeated Hannibal. Rome had survived its deadliest threat. Carthage was broken. It lost territory, power, and independence. Hannibal would later wander through foreign courts, still resisting Rome where he could, until he took his own life rather than be captured. For Rome, victory at Zama changed everything. No Western rival could now truly match its power. The Mediterranean was opening before it. Empire was no longer a possibility. It was destiny. With Carthage humbled, Rome turned east toward Greece and the wider Mediterranean world. The kingdoms born from the empire of Alexander the Great were divided and suspicious of one another. Macedon, the Seleucids, Pergamon, Egypt, leagues of Greek cities, all were fragmented. Rome exploited those divisions masterfully. Sometimes it entered as liberator, sometimes as ally, sometimes as judge. Almost always it stayed. Roman legions defeated Macedonian phalanxes and proved the flexibility of Roman military organization. One by one, Eastern powers submitted. By the middle of the 2nd century BC, Rome stood, unmatched across the Mediterranean world. Then, in 146 BC, it sent a message no one could ignore. Carthage was destroyed. The city was taken, burned, and erased as a rival. Rome was now master of the sea. Victory brought treasure, land, slaves, taxes, and luxury. But empire also poisoned the old republican balance. Wealth concentrated in elite hands. Small farmers lost land. Urban poverty increased. Political violence became more common. Generals returned from war rich and adored. Ordinary citizens became dependent on patrons. The Republic had conquered everyone else. Now it began consuming itself. Two reformers tried to save Rome through change. Tiberius Gracchus and later Gaius Gracchus argued that land should be redistributed, citizens should be helped, and corruption reduced. They challenged aristocratic interests and gained support from crowds. Their enemies feared them. Both brothers died violently. Their deaths mattered because they normalized something dangerous: political murder. From then on, Roman politics would increasingly be settled not by debate, but by force. Then came Gaius Marius, a talented military leader. Facing invasions and crisis, he reformed the Roman army. He recruited poorer citizens who had once lacked the property needed for service. The state equipped them. Soldiering became more like a profession. This made Rome stronger in war, but it created a hidden danger. Soldiers now depended on generals for rewards, pensions, and land. Their loyalty shifted. Not always to the Republic, often to commanders. This would transform Roman politics forever. Conflict soon erupted between Marius and another commander, Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Disputes over military command escalated until Sulla did something once considered unthinkable. He marched his army on Rome itself. Roman soldiers entered their own capital as conquerors. Civil war followed. Power seizures, exile, revenge, and mass killings became reality. Sulla became dictator, though he later retired. A sacred line had been crossed. The army could now decide politics. The Republic would never fully recover. Into this unstable world stepped the most famous Roman of all, Julius Caesar. He came from noble ancestry but needed power, money, and alliances. He possessed enormous charisma, political instinct, and limitless ambition. Caesar formed an alliance with two other giants, Pompey, the celebrated commander, and Crassus, the immensely wealthy power broker. This arrangement became known as the First Triumvirate. Together they dominated Roman politics. Then Caesar received command in Gaul. There he would become a legend. Beginning in 58 BC, Caesar campaigned in Gaul, roughly modern France and nearby lands. He defeated tribes, expanded Roman territory, crossed rivers, built bridges, and even launched expeditions into Britain. He wrote accounts of these campaigns, presenting himself as disciplined, brilliant, and favored by fortune. Many of his claims remain debated, but one truth is certain. He emerged from Gaul with hardened veterans fiercely loyal to him and with immense prestige. Back in Rome, rivals grew nervous. A victorious general with a personal army was dangerous, especially one named Caesar. The Senate ordered Caesar to surrender command. Pompey aligned against him. Caesar faced a choice: submit or rebel. In 49 BC, he crossed the small river Rubicon with troops, an illegal act that triggered civil war. Tradition gives him the words, "The die is cast." Pompey fled east. Caesar advanced rapidly. Once again, the Republic depended on Romans fighting Romans. Caesar defeated Pompey's forces at Pharsalus. Pompey fled to Egypt, where he was murdered before Caesar arrived. There Caesar became involved in Egyptian politics and formed a famous relationship with Cleopatra. He later returned west and crushed remaining opposition. By 46 BC, Caesar was master of Rome. He introduced reforms, including calendar changes, debt measures, colonies for veterans, and administrative centralization. But he also accepted titles that frightened many Romans, including dictator for life. Romans remembered kings with hatred. Many believed Caesar aimed at monarchy. On March 15, 44 BC, the Ides of March, a group of senators assassinated Caesar. They claimed to be saving liberty. Daggers struck repeatedly inside the Senate meeting place. Caesar fell dead. But the conspirators misunderstood the age they lived in. They killed the man, not the forces he had. Unleashed, Rome did not return to republican peace. It plunged into chaos. Caesars were named an adopted heir, a young relative called Augustus, then known as Octavian. He was still in his late teens. Many dismissed him as weak, inexperienced, and unimportant. They were wrong. Octavian possessed cold intelligence, patience, and relentless ambition. He maneuvered between rivals, especially Caesar's ally Mark Antony. Eventually, Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus formed the second triumvirate. Unlike the first, this alliance was official and ruthless. The triumvirs hunted enemies. Lists were posted naming those marked for death. Property was confiscated. Old grudges were settled under legal cover. One victim was the great orator Cicero, whose speeches against Antony cost him his life. Then the triumvirs marched east and defeated Caesar's assassins at Philippi. Brutus and Cassius died. The men who killed Caesar were gone. But peace still did not come. Power was divided after the civil wars. Augustus, still known then as Octavian, controlled the western half of the Roman world. Mark Antony controlled the east. In the eastern provinces, Antony joined Cleopatra in Egypt. Their alliance was romantic, political, and deeply controversial. To many Roman conservatives, Antony appeared corrupted by Eastern luxury and foreign influence. To Octavian, this was a priceless opportunity. He portrayed Antony as a traitor who had fallen under Cleopatra's spell. What had once been an uneasy partnership now moved steadily toward war. In 31 BC, the final struggle came at the Battle of Actium. Fleets clashed in one of the most decisive naval battles of the ancient world. Octavian's forces emerged victorious. Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt, knowing the tide had turned against them. Soon afterward, both took their own lives. With their deaths, Octavian stood alone. All major rivals were dead, defeated, or removed from power. Rome, exhausted by generations of civil war, no longer demanded freedom above all else. It wanted order. It wanted stability. It wanted peace. Octavian would provide those things, but not without cost. In 27 BC, Octavian received a new title that would change history: Augustus. He carefully avoided calling himself king, because Romans still hated the memory of monarchy. Instead, he claimed that he was restoring the Republic. In truth, he had created something entirely new. It was one-man rule hidden beneath republican forms. The Senate still existed. Magistrates still held office. Votes still took place. Old traditions continued in appearance. But real power rested with Augustus. He controlled the armies, key appointments, finances, and state policy. Rome now had its first emperor, even if many Romans preferred not to say the word aloud. Julius Caesar had ruled too openly and too boldly. Augustus learned from that mistake. He ruled with caution, patience, and political intelligence. He respected appearances. He rewarded powerful. elites instead of humiliating them. He paid soldiers reliably. He stabilized troubled provinces. He built monuments and restored temples. He promoted family values and moral order. Most importantly, he ended civil war. After decades of bloodshed, people were willing to accept reduced political freedom in exchange for peace. And peace, after so much suffering, was priceless. Thus began the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Under Augustus, roads expanded across the empire. Trade flourished between distant provinces. Cities grew richer and more organized. Administration became more efficient. Roman law spread into new lands. The Latin language advanced with Roman influence. Military frontiers hardened and became more secure. The empire was changing into something larger than a machine of conquest. It was becoming a civilization system that connected millions of people under one order. Yet while Augustus strengthened the empire, events were unfolding in a distant province called Judea. He could never have imagined. A small religious movement was beginning, one that would one day transform Rome more deeply than any army ever could. But that story belonged to the future. Rome had defeated Hannibal Barca. It had destroyed Carthage. It had buried the Republic and crowned its first emperor. Ahead still lay glory, madness, expansion, corruption, philosophers, tyrants, Christians, invasions, and the long road to collapse. The empire was only at its beginning, and one day it would face its end. When Augustus took control, Rome was exhausted. Decades of civil war had drained the population, frightened the elite, and destroyed trust in old institutions. People no longer dreamed of pure republican freedom. They wanted stability. Augustus understood this better than anyone. He kept the Senate. He preserved old titles. He spoke as if the Republic still lived. But beneath the surface, Rome had changed forever. Armies answered to the emperor. Governors depended on imperial favor. Taxes flowed through centralized systems. Public image was carefully managed. Augustus rebuilt temples, roads, aqueducts, and monuments. He famously claimed he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. In many ways, he was right. This was not only propaganda, it was statecraft. The Roman world entered an age historians call the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. It was not peace everywhere, and not peace for everyone, but across vast territories there was relative internal order. Trade increased. Merchants traveled safely. Cities expanded. Law became more predictable. For millions living under Roman rule, empire often meant something simple. Life could continue. Yet even Augustus could not solve one fatal issue. Who should rule after the ruler died? Rome had no clear law of succession. There was no stable constitution for empire, no automatic inheritance, no fixed election system. Every transfer of power risked conspiracy, military intervention, or civil war. Augustus maneuvered carefully, adopting heirs when natural options failed. Eventually, power passed to Tiberius, his stepson and adopted successor. Tiberius was experienced and capable, but reserved, suspicious, and unpopular. He governed competently in many respects, yet never inspired affection. The Roman people had discovered another truth. A great founder does not guarantee great heirs. After Tiberius came one of the most infamous emperors in history, Caligula. Stories about him describe cruelty, extravagance, humiliation of senators, and bizarre behavior. Ancient writers often exaggerated, but even allowing for gossip, his reign ended violently. He was assassinated by members of the Praetorian Guard, the elite unit meant to protect the emperor. This revealed another dangerous reality. The emperor ruled Rome, but the guard standing nearest to him could rule the emperor. Then came Claudius, unexpectedly elevated after Caligula's death. Often mocked by contemporaries, Claudius proved surprisingly effective. He expanded administration, reformed bureaucracy, and launched the conquest of Britain in 43 AD. Roman soldiers crossed the sea into a misty island long associated with mystery and edge of world geography. There they founded settlements, roads, forts, and eventually a city that would become famous, Londinium, modern London. After Claudius came Nero. Young, theatrical, and increasingly erratic, Nero's reign began with promise but deteriorated into paranoia and scandal. In 64 AD, a great fire devastated much of Rome. Whether Nero caused it remains uncertain. Ancient rumor blamed him. He blamed others. One group targeted during this period was an emerging religious minority, Christians. They were persecuted, executed, and treated as enemies of order. At the time, few could have imagined that this small movement would one day become the dominant religion of the empire itself. Nero eventually lost support and committed suicide in 68 AD. With his death, Julio-Claudian dynasty ended, and Rome again faced chaos. In 69 AD, multiple claimants fought for power. Armies proclaimed their own candidates. Generals marched. Loyalties shifted. This became known as the Year of the Four Emperors. It ended when Vespasian, a practical and respected commander, secured control. Vespasian restored finances, re-established order, and began construction of one of the most famous buildings in world history, the Colosseum. This enormous amphitheater symbolized Roman engineering, imperial confidence, and public entertainment culture. Gladiatorial combat, animal hunts, spectacles, and executions turned power into performance. The people were fed, entertained, and reminded who ruled. Following turbulence came one of Rome's finest eras. A sequence of rulers often called the Five Good Emperors brought competence and relative stability. Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. Under Trajan, Rome reached its greatest territorial extent. Under Hadrian, policy shifted from expansion to consolidation. He strengthened borders and ordered one of Rome's most famous defensive works in Britain, Hadrian's Wall. Under Marcus Aurelius, philosopher-emperor and Stoic thinker, Rome still projected strength, but cracks had begun to widen. Plagues spread. Wars intensified. Succession problems returned. Marcus Aurelius was succeeded by his son Commodus. This was significant because earlier emperors had often chosen capable successors through adoption. Now hereditary transfer returned, and not successfully. Commodus became associated with vanity, spectacle, instability, and erratic rule. He fancied himself a gladiator and embraced personal glorification. His assassination in 1922 AD triggered another cycle of crisis. The age of wise rulers was over. The age of turbulence had begun. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome entered one of the most dangerous periods in its history, the crisis of the 3rd century. Emperors rose and fell rapidly. Many were murdered by soldiers. Civil wars erupted. Frontiers were attacked by Germanic groups, Persians, and rebels. Inflation damaged the economy. Trade weakened. Cities declined. Plague and insecurity spread. At times, the empire nearly fractured into separate states. This was the nightmare hidden inside the Roman system. When military loyalty determines leadership, leadership becomes unstable. Rome still had armies, still had cities, still had prestige, but internally it was shaking. Then came Diocletian. A hard and disciplined ruler, he recognized that one emperor could no longer easily govern such vast lands. He reorganized the empire and created the Tetrarchy, ruled by 4 senior and junior emperors divided geographically. He reformed taxation, expanded bureaucracy, strengthened military structure, and separated civil from military authority in many areas. He also launched severe persecution of Christians, believing unity of religion was necessary for unity of state. Yet, history was already moving against him. The faith he tried to suppress would soon stand beside imperial power. After new civil wars, one man emerged dominant, Constantine the Great. Before a decisive battle, tradition says he saw a heavenly sign linked to the Christian symbol. Whether literal, symbolic, or political, Constantine embraced Christianity as a protected religion. In 313 AD, the Edict of Milan legalized Christian worship. The persecuted faith became tolerated, then favored, and eventually central to imperial identity. Constantine also founded a new capital in the east, Constantinople. Strategically placed between Europe and Asia, it would become one of history's greatest cities. The center of Roman gravity was shifting eastward. Over time, the empire increasingly functioned as eastern and western halves. The east was richer, more urbanized, and economically resilient. The west was more vulnerable to frontier pressure, rural decline, and political fragmentation. Both were Roman but not equally strong. When people speak of the fall of Rome, they often mean the western half. The Eastern Roman Empire continued for nearly another 1,000 years after the West collapsed. Modern historians often call it the Byzantine Empire, though its people still considered themselves Roman. The word barbarian was Roman shorthand for outsiders, especially non-Greek and non-Latin peoples. But these groups were never one united enemy. They were Goths, Vandals, Franks, Suebi, Alans, Huns, migrants, mercenaries, federates, tribes, and kingdoms. Many served Rome. Many traded with Rome. Many admired Roman prestige, yet pressure increased, borders became porous. Roman armies increasingly included barbarian recruits and commanders. The distinction between Roman and outsider began to blur. In 378 AD, the Eastern Roman army under Emperor Valens fought Gothic forces at the Battle of Adrianople. It ended in catastrophe. Valens was killed. Roman forces were shattered. The battle exposed how dangerous frontier mismanagement had become. The empire could still win wars, but it could no longer assume superiority. Confidence suffered, and enemies noticed. For centuries, Rome itself had symbolized invincibility. Then in 410 AD, Visigothic forces under Alaric I entered and sacked the city. Though not total destruction, the psychological shock was immense. Rome, the eternal city, had been violated again. Saint Augustine of Hippo responded by writing the City of God, arguing that earthly empires are temporary while divine order endures. The old pagan certainty that Rome was eternal had been broken. In the 5th century, Western emperors often became weak figureheads. Real power lay with generals, court factions, or regional rulers. Tax systems weakened. Urban institutions decayed. Armies became harder to fund. Territories fragmented. Britain slipped away. Gaul changed hands. North Africa, critical for grain and revenue, was seized by Vandals. Rome still existed, but increasingly in name alone. The traditional date for the fall of the Western Roman Empire is 476 AD. That year, a Germanic leader named Odoacer deposed the young emperor Romulus Augustulus. The imperial insignia was sent east. No new Western emperor replaced him. It was less a dramatic explosion than a final administrative collapse after a long decline. The West did not vanish overnight. People still farmed, traded, worshipped, married, argued, and governed locally. Roman law survived. Latin survived. Christian institutions survived. But centralized Western imperial rule was over. There is no single reason Rome fell. It did not collapse because of one battle, one bad emperor, or one invasion. It was the result of political instability, succession crises, military overextension, economic strain, civil wars, corruption, reliance on mercenary forces, population decline in regions, migrations, invasions, and administrative fragmentation. Most great powers do not fall from one blow. They weaken through accumulated pressure. Rome was no exception, and yet Rome did not disappear. Its language evolved into Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, and influenced English. Its law shaped legal systems. Its roads altered geography. Its architecture inspired capitals worldwide. Its republic influenced political thought. Its empire became both a warning and a dream for later rulers. Its eastern half survived until 1453. Its religion transformed continents. Its calendar echoes in daily life. Its title Caesar, Kaiser, Tsar continued for centuries. Even today, when governments debate citizenship, military power, infrastructure, corruption, expansion, identity, or decline, they often ask Roman questions. Rome began as a settlement by a river. It rose through discipline, adaptation, and relentless ambition. It conquered enemies abroad, then fought itself within. It reached heights few states have matched, then fractured under the weight of its own scale. Yet unlike most fallen powers, Rome never fully left the world. Some empires control land. Rome still controls imagination. And that is why its story is never truly over.